The first reading this morning is taken from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18, and verses 15 to 20. Instead, he will send to you a prophet like me from among your own people, and you are to obey him. On the day that you were gathered at Mount Sinai, you begged not to hear the Lord speak again or to see his fiery presence anymore, because you were afraid you would die. So the Lord said to me, "They have made a wise request. I will send them a prophet like you from among their own people. I will tell him what to say, and he will tell the people everything I command. He will speak in my name, and I will punish anyone who refuses to obey him. But if any prophet dares to speak a message in my name when I did not command him to do so, he must die for it, and so must any prophet who speaks in the name of other gods." The second reading is from Mark, first chapter, verses 21 to 28. In Jesus' day, having an unclean spirit within you could have been any number of things that others simply didn't understand. What they did understand is that it made you an outcast from society. Jesus addresses that and restores this man to his place. The authority he uses to do that isn't like anything they'd seen before. This is something new. Jesus and his disciples came to the town of Capernaum, and on the next Sabbath, Jesus went to the synagogue and began to teach. The people who heard him were amazed at the way he taught, for he wasn't like the teachers of the law. Instead, he taught with authority. Just then, a man with an evil spirit in him came into the synagogue and screamed, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Are you here to destroy us? I know who you are. You are God's holy messenger." Jesus ordered the spirit, "Be quiet and come out of the man." The evil spirit shook the man hard, gave a loud scream, and came out of him. The people were all so amazed that they started saying to one another, "What is this? Is it some kind of new teaching? This man has authority to give orders to the evil spirits, and they obey him." And so the news about Jesus spread quickly everywhere in the province of Galilee. The word of God.
So I'm on my way to the church this morning, just driving down the highway, and it's a beautiful day. The sun's shining. It snowed, obviously, but the road was good. It was all good. Just having a nice drive, and then suddenly there's this big cloud ahead, and it's of course a snowplow, and he's got the blade down on the shoulder. Which is not so much clearing snow as rearranging it into the air and across the rest of the highway. So I can't see anything, and he's not going very fast, and of course that's super annoying. What are you going to do? Well, I did what the only thing you can do. I stayed behind him, and I followed him until he actually pulled off, and then went past him. Because that is the only thing you can do, right? It is. You can't pass them. There's only two lanes. First of all, you can't pass them because you can't see, because the snow's blowing across that lane. You can't pass them because they're huge, and you can't see what's in front of them either, right? Plus, they're heavy, they're carrying, and probably one of those ones with a sander, right, that's throwing all that stuff on the ground. And plus, if you try and get past them, they got all this hardware on the front, right? Those blades and the plow and stuff, and you don't know what they're going to do. They could turn left, you don't know. Not to mention the whole legality of passing a snowplow. But you don't, because all those things could happen, right? So you just sit there, you follow it, and you fume because you're kind of in a hurry and they're slowing you down. Right? No, of course not. You realize that the reason that plow's out in the first place is for your safety. They're trying to clear the highway so that it's easier for you. They're taking care of you. That's what they do. That's what they're for. So you just follow them until they move, and then you go on your merry way. 10 minutes or so later than you'd planned. But still, you remember why they're there in the first place. It's for you. Right? Are you concerned yet about the picture that's on the screen behind me? It's a gun. Anybody recognize it? Yes. It's a Ruger Mark I, 22 caliber. It's on your screen because if you are Googling a picture and you've got it set on a large picture and you Google Mark I, 22, 9 of the first 10 pictures are that. 9 of the first 10 pictures are that. One of them, and I'm happy to say, by the way, it's the first one, is this. Mark 1, verse 22. What's interesting to me about that is that this verse is about authority. And 9 of those first 10 pictures demonstrate to you how we think about authority. Authority is based on who's got the weapon. Authority is based on who's got the power. Authority is based on who has control. That's how we perceive it. We perceive authority as something that's over us. Think about, go back to in this classic scene, right, on the playground at school. I'm sure this never happens, but it's a classic scene on the playground at a school. 2 kids arguing about something, and one says, yes, it is, the other says it isn't, and you're going to make me? Who says? Make me. I know you're thinking I started that with playground, but I'm actually talking about Trump and, what's his name, in North Korea, right? That's what happens in international politics these days, isn't it? That same thing. You're going to make me? How are you going to make me? Well, that's what we have the United Nations for. And we can see how well that works sometimes. But that it literally isn't a playground thing. It happens in the office, it happens in government, it happens between countries. It happens between you and your next door neighbor. Sometimes, doesn't it? It's about who's got the power, who's got the control, who's got the weapon. Because that's how we perceive authority. And it seems funny to me. It's not actually in this verse, but what's the first thing when these people in this story where Jesus is teaching and he heals this man, and what's the first thing they say? It's not, wow, that was cool. It's, what is this? Like it's something they've never seen before. Because they haven't. And we're at the same stage. If this were to have happened right in this moment, we'd do the same thing. We'd go, what the heck was that? Because our understanding of authority, just like in the first century when the Romans controlled everything, is based on who has the power to control a situation. And we see that as who has the biggest size, who has the weapons, who has the money. Who has the money is a huge one. Who owns the most stuff? Who has the biggest army? They're all variations of the same thing. It's our understanding of power is might. And that's M-I-G-H-T if you're thinking about the biblical story about the woman with the money. It's about power. That's how we perceive it. It's no wonder that their first response to what Jesus was saying and what Jesus was doing was to say, what is this? We literally don't understand what this is. This is new. It's a new teaching. It is one of the saddest things to me sometimes when people start talking about how the Bible is no longer relevant. And you read a story like this where they go, what is this? We don't really understand. And then you realize that 2,000 years later, we're still doing the same thing. What's really relevant is that we still don't get it. Maybe we talk about it, but we certainly don't do it. Because we're still looking at authority the same way. We're still going, ooh, this is new. when we start talking about authority as anything other than power. The power over others. Even whether you're looking at international politics, which is, well, I don't know if you noticed that just the other day, they moved the doomsday clock forward. Yeah, it's 2 minutes to midnight now. If you're not familiar with the doomsday clock, it's the clock that was, it's literally a clock, but it was set up by scientists to indicate how close they thought we were to the end of the world. That's as close, I think it's actually been closer, but that's as close as you can, like it's 2 minutes to midnight. What does that mean? Oh, it means that we're really close to destroying ourselves. Yeah. With what? Love? Grace? Kindness? Nope. Actually, originally it was set up because of nuclear weapons. Because we had suddenly discovered the power to not only destroy an enemy, but to obliterate the planet. Yikes. But it's not just international politics, it's local government even. How we govern ourselves generally. Right? We're supposed to govern. The whole point of governing is to care for the people. But sometimes what it turns into is who has the power. Okay, a lot of the time, what it turns into is who has power, who has the ability to control things. Still, in many countries in the world, we elect those people, so ultimately you still have some say, you know, at least until there's a coup and the military takes over. But that's another way we perceive it. We perceive authority is by uniform. Another way that we perceive authority is experience. I have some experience of how this works, so I must know how it works, so you're going to let me do it. What you might not know is I might have some experience of doing this, but I'm really bad at it. Another way that we look at authority is that authority comes from education. I've been to school for many years. I have 2 degrees. I must be smarter than you. I should be the person in charge. Not necessarily. You might want to find out what that education is in, first of all, and secondly, you might want to know, also related to experience, how I use it. Because if I use it to control you for my own benefit, how is that helping you? These are all different ways in which we might perceive authority. We invest authority in people, right? And this is often one of our biggest struggles with things like the military or with police or government officials, is that we invest in them as a society the authority to, for lack of a better word, enforce these laws that we set up. And that's all a good thing. And in fact, we not only invest them with authority, we invest them with our trust. Of course, because we're all human beings, sometimes that's not how it works. But the point of it is that we are not just investing in them authority, but trust as well. And that is based on what? They've been trained to do that. Still, how do we perceive that role? I actually just showed you how we perceive that role by saying their job is to enforce. What are they enforcing? They're enforcing laws which we set up in order that society might live better together. Are you sure? Because almost all of those laws are based on what you shall not do. Not what you should, but what you shall not do. In fact, if you go back to the 10 Commandments, many of the 10 Commandments are what you shall not do. Not that I think that was the intention at all of the 10 Commandments, but we worded them that way. We framed them that way. Just like we do with laws in general, just like we do with society. Much of what we do and our behavior as society is rooted in what you cannot do because it's against the law that we set up so that you won't do it. Hang on. Didn't we do that so that we'd all live better together? Isn't that the point of the 10 Commandments? Say yes, because it is. point of the Ten Commandments wasn't so that the people would be controlled. It was so that the people would know how to live well with each other and with God. That was the point. Of course, the moment you have to enforce it, it might turn into something else. But the goal was for people to live better together. It's no wonder when Jesus comes in and starts teaching as Jesus teaches, I'll come to that in a second, that the immediate response was, what is this? I bet if Jesus had walked into the synagogue, stood up, thumped his fist on the pulpit a few times and told people how they were going to burn in the very fires of hell if they don't do what I say, they probably would have recognized it. No offense to any scribes or Pharisees, but they probably would have recognized it. How many years would you have recognized that? In fact, we call it fire and brimstone preaching. It's got a name even. First of all, it's fear-based. And you know that can't be good because of how many times Jesus said, don't be afraid. But secondly, it's about as long as you do what I tell you, you'll be fine. As long as you do. So who has the power here? I have power over you simply because I tell you you're going to burn in the very fires of hell if you don't do what I tell you? Say yes. Wow, I do have power. Who knew? Okay, that was a little scary. No. Here's why they were so surprised. I think why they were so surprised at Jesus' teaching. It's because Jesus showed love. He didn't just tell them about it. He didn't just share with them how they could care for each other and love each other and how living together could be so much better if only we would think about these things. I bet he framed it in the context of, here's what I think. You should think about this. You should think about this. And by the way, here's a demonstration of what I mean. Sure, Jesus might very well have smacked this fellow on the forehead and said, be healed! And he fell over backwards where his friends picked him up and carried him out. You recognize that? Yes. But maybe Jesus just sat him down and had a conversation. Maybe Jesus just made him feel a little bit more like he belonged. See, here's the thing with this whole casting out of demons stories in the Bible, is that you were possessed with a demon if you had anything from like any kind of illness or deformity, or you had an injury that caused you to be unable to work, if you looked funny, if you sounded funny, if you maybe had a few mental health issues, but nobody wanted to talk about that because you were possessed. Any number of things could get you labeled as possessed by an evil spirit. And the result of that is you are no longer part of society. You are literally cast out. Whatever it was, doesn't matter. If somebody could label you as possessed by a demon, that was it for you. So sometimes when I read these stories about Jesus casting out demons in the Bible, I just think to myself, I wonder what everyone else perceived as this person's problem. And then I wonder what was true. What was the truth, really? Whatever it was, sure, there's a miracle if Jesus helps that person be better. Yes, it's a miracle. Isn't it also a miracle, though, if even one person were to have sat down and had a conversation? If one person had bothered to reach out to somebody that everyone else had labeled as someone you don't want to have anything to do with, wouldn't that be a miracle too? So I think sometimes when we read these stories about Jesus casting out a demon, I think he just sat down, had a conversation with them, told them how much they were loved. He might have even given them a hug. It sounds kind of trite when you talk about it, but it's powerful when it happens. Maybe Jesus just simply helped them not only helped them feel more like maybe somebody did care, but maybe he showed all the people around him that they ought to. That's a huge miracle right there. I think the authority of Jesus didn't have anything to do with whether he was bigger, faster, stronger, had an army, had money, had a great education. I don't think it had anything to do with that. I think it had to do with the sincerity of his love. It wasn't just that Jesus talked about love, it's that he lived it, and he showed people how to do it. Sincerely, how to do it. Not just following through on something because and here's what makes it sincere, not just following through on something because it benefits you, but because it benefits somebody else. Truly benefits them. It really isn't about, think about this for a second, the bit about our little dog, when I was talking to the kids, and I was talking about our little dog and how our little dog's the boss in the house. Because everything revolves around what that little dog is going to do or needs to do. Why? Is it because we don't like cleaning up his mess when he poos in the corner? Is it because we get really mad when we buy a rug and then he eats the end of it and we got to throw it out? Is it because he's a bit of a pain in the, he's difficult to deal with? Is it because he's got to go outside every hour and a half or else we're cleaning something up? Is that what makes him the boss? Or is it that we love him and he loves us? Isn't that what makes him the boss? See, at the heart of all of these things, when we start talking about authority and we talk about power over people, that's not it. That's not what Jesus is talking about. Jesus is talking about what's at the heart of all of those things. The point of having laws isn't to control people. The point is that we might live better together. So we shouldn't frame them in the context of you shall not do this. Shouldn't we frame them in the context of you should do this? Of course it's incredibly impractical. Of course it is. It's no wonder that they were all surprised at what Jesus was doing. But that is what he was doing. That's what he did with his life, is to turn that whole thing on its head and say, instead of looking at things from the point of view of power over people and how to control them so that everything will be fine and people will get along based on the things you shouldn't do, why don't we start talking about the things you should do and how well we might get along if we actually stopped for a minute and listened to somebody else's opinion instead of immediately thought about how we were going to respond to that to tell them they were wrong. What if we took a few extra moments to give somebody a hug and pay them some attention when they were feeling like they were alone and nobody really cared? What if we, instead of trying to figure out how best to keep people who didn't have a home out of our neighborhood, we might actually welcome them into the neighborhood and try and find them somewhere to live? What if we did those things instead? What if, instead of trying to avoid somebody who clearly has, by their appearance, has some issues, why wouldn't we go over and find out what those are and how can we help them? That's what happened in the story. Jesus talks about it, he goes into the synagogue, he talks about it, and then he demonstrates it. No wonder they were stunned. What I'm wondering about, though, is were they more stunned about what he said, or were they more stunned when he actually did it and it worked? See, it's one thing to talk about it, because we do that in church all the time. We talk about it. It's another thing entirely to go out and make it different in the world. That's the hard part. That's the challenge. And you will do that because I said so. No, you won't. Please don't. Please don't do it because I said so. Please don't ever do it because I said so. Please don't ever think, oh, well, we've been told this morning, thank goodness I know now. Because that's not the point. The point is for you to think about it. The point is for you to think about it, embrace it, have it become part of your life, if that is you. Because that's at the heart of all of this sincerity of Jesus. Jesus, I think, simply lived out what is truly in all of us. If we believe that God is in all of us and Jesus is in all of us, ultimately, living that out is what will accomplish this. We do have issues. We do. There's all sorts of complications. It is not that simple. It isn't. It's much more complicated. But there's only one way to find out whether or not it can be accomplished, and that's to try. No one, I cannot imagine, I can't imagine anyone hearing Jesus speak and think, well, thank goodness we've been told we'd best go and do it. I imagine them instead thinking that's it. Wait, how can I, let me think. And I bet Jesus had more conversation with them. And then maybe they went away and did it their way. Or maybe they did it not at all. The point is that Jesus engaged to them and involved them. It's not about power over people, it's about power with people. That's what accomplishes good, is power with people. And that's what Jesus is all about. That's what this sharing of authority, this sincerity is about. That's where Jesus' authority comes from. It's not the power of God that reaches out upon you. It's not that at all. It's about the love that is in the heart of Jesus being shared with other people. You can do that too.